Y'all, I just sat here for 3 minutes talking to myself, thinking that there was some horrible problem with the stream. I forgot that you have to hit a separate button on YouTube to go live rather than just do it through OBS. So, you missed 3 minutes of quality confusion content. Hello, humans. How are you all going? Welcome. Check out... Wait, what direction do I have to spin for this? Ah! There you go. There's a bookshelf. I gotta open an OBS so I can see where I'm gesturing because I have no idea. Look, we got a bookshelf completed here. I'm assuming y'all can hear me now that I've sorted things out. Look, we have a display. We have a home for the gentleman that isn't, just in the living room. So that's pretty neat. Hey, so, yes, someone just reminded me, I did do this in my 3 minutes of confusion, but I haven't done it again. So just so that we can make sure what the sort of delay is at the moment, when I say vampire, you say north. Vampire! And now I stare at chat and wait to see everyone say north. See how long it takes. It's a little pause. It's a bit of a delay here. This is interesting. I could sort of lower the latency, but here's the thing. I'm assuming I have, more than 1 frame per minute at the moment, and a delay is fine. Mostly. Mostly. I might set it to slightly lower latency. We'll see. We'll find out. Well, no, I can't right now. So this is what we're living with. This is better tech issues than last time, though, isn't it? Here we go. We got lots of norths. We got one confused person heading into the west. Oh, Sorvers. Yep. That's your new name, Rubber Duck. Welcome to the Sorver. So, as a lot of you probably know, I tend to start off my stream with a little bit of a reading, just while people are sort of trickling in, which reminds me I should actually post a link on the Twitter. Give me a second while I do that. But it's just so that people can sort of catch up, join us, find out what's going on. Yeah. Okay, well, let's see what a job I do. Oh, shush. Be quiet, me. Be quiet. I should set everything to mute before I click any buttons. All right. Live! Exclamation point. Link. Boop. Great. And now while people start to trickle in, we're going to do a little bit of a reading. It's how we do here on the Monarch's Factory. I will say, I don't know where the household copy of Dracula is. I had some ideas about sections I might read from Dracula, but even if I did know where the household copy is, I'm pretty sure my mum is teaching Dracula today, so she probably needs it. So you know what you get instead? Yeah, you're welcome. You are so welcome. All right, so just for a little bit of context for you, Edward and Bella, mostly Edward's hot and cold with Bella. At this point, he keeps, he'll be friendly and he'll talk to her, and then he'll just be angry and tell her to go away and stay away from him. But Bella's so curious, and she's like, no human behaves this way. So she's been doing her research, and now they've just had an attack followed by a dinner in Port Angeles, and they're driving home, and they're having a conversation. So I've decided it didn't. Blah, blah, blah. Let me try again. I've decided it doesn't matter, I whispered. It doesn't matter? His tone made me look up. I had finally broken through his carefully composed mask. His face was incredulous, with just a hint of the anger I'd feared. No, I said softly. It doesn't matter to me what you are. A hard, mocking edge entered his voice. You don't care if I'm a monster, if I'm not human? No. He was silent, staring straight ahead. His face was bleak and cold. You're angry, I sighed. I shouldn't have said anything. No, he said, but his tone was as hard as his face. I'd rather know what you're thinking, even if your thinking is insane. So I'm wrong again, I challenged. That's not what I was referring to. It doesn't matter, he quoted, gritting his teeth together. I'm right, I gasped. It doesn't matter? I took a deep breath. Not really. I paused. But I am curious. My voice, at least, was composed. He was suddenly resigned. What are you curious about? How old are you? 17, he answered promptly. And how long have you been 17? His lips twitched as he stared at the road. A while, he admitted at last. Okay, I smiled, pleased that he was still being honest with me. He stared down at me with watchful eyes, much as he had before, when he was worried I would go into shock. I smiled wider in encouragement, and he frowned. Don't laugh, but how can you come out during the daytime? He laughed anyway. Myth. Burnt by the sun? Myth. Sleeping in coffins? Myth. He hesitated for a moment, and a peculiar tone entered his voice. I can't sleep. It took me a minute to absorb that. At all? Never, he said, his voice nearly inaudible. He turned to look at me with a wistful expression. The golden eyes held mine, and I lost my train of thought. I stared at him until he looked away. You haven't asked me the most important question yet. His voice was hard now, and when he looked at me again, his eyes were cold. I blinked, still dazed. Which one is that? You aren't concerned about my diet? He asked sarcastically. Oh, I murmured. That. Yes, that. His voice was bleak. Don't you want to know if I drink blood? I flinched. Well, Jacob said something about that. What did Jacob say? He asked flatly. He said you didn't hunt people. He said your family was supposed to be dangerous because it wasn't supposed to be dangerous because you only hunted animals. He said we weren't dangerous? His voice was deeply skeptical. Well, not exactly. He said you weren't supposed to be dangerous, but the Quileutes still didn't want you on their land, just in case. He looked forward, but I couldn't tell if he was watching the road or not. So, was he right? About not hunting people? I tried to keep my voice as even as possible. The Quileutes have a long memory, he whispered. I took it as a confirmation. Don't let that make you complacent, though, he warned me. They're right to keep their distance from us. We are still dangerous. I don't understand. We try, he explained slowly. We're usually very good at what we do. Sometimes we make mistakes. Me, for example, allowing myself to be alone with you. This is a mistake? I heard the sadness in my voice, but I didn't know if he could as well. A very dangerous one, he murmured. I'm going to stop it there, because I feel like, without even checking the chat, I feel like y'all are probably making noises of complaint. I hope not, though. I'm actually I'm still a little bit of a twihard. Back in the days when it was most popular, I didn't, get onto the Twilight trend until it was already peaking and sort of on the downhill thing, so I feel like I got a little bit of a less biased view just by sort of the effect of witnessing both the Twilight love and the Twilight hatred before I read it and going, all right, well, let's find out what this is about. It's fine. It's a dramatic tween novel. It's fine. It's fun. Anyway, I just got a bunch of notifications. Were they important things? No, they weren't. They're just my friends trying to get in contact. Well, screw them. We're here today. I'm sorry. I hope they're not watching. Sometimes they do. I will live my truth. Thank you, Apollo. Yeah, no one expects Twilight. It is the Spanish Inquisition. All right, there's my knee peeking into frame. So, hello, everybody. I hope people have trickled in. That was a bit of a shorter reading than we usually do, but Twilight also moves through different sort of topics very quickly, and I wanted it to stay on theme. So, before they started talking about superpowers and telepathy, I wanted to cut it off. Cut it off while it was still the quality content that I was looking for. Welcome to the stream. This is a campaign discovery stream. I call it that rather than a world building stream for one slightly ridiculous reason. When you're world building, you're making stuff up. When you're discovering your campaign setting, it's more like you're just asking questions and working out what you secretly already know about your setting deep down. That's kind of the concept. It's like you're an archaeologist and you've got a general idea. You've got your sort of dig site, and you know there's probably stuff here. You know that it's probably Roman or Viking or what have you, and then you start digging and you find out what you actually get. And you dig down and you find your artifacts, and you can sort of use them to pin pieces of your campaign into place. So the last time we did this, we were talking about the Forgotten North. Can you see my mouse here? The Forgotten North. Hey, which is a very dramatic name for a place that would never be, it's a very external kind of a name for a place, because only we would call it that. The people in the north would call it whatever it's called. The people not in the north have forgotten about it, so they wouldn't call it anything. So the Forgotten North is something that could only exist on a map for our eyes, but it still sounds cool, so I've left it there. Now, I did take notes, between things. You may have noticed that I've replaced the I'm gonna point at it with the mouse, even though I can't. Look, it's over here on this side. I've replaced the OneNote file with an image of Bela Lugosi as Dracula because I didn't type anything into the OneNote file last time because I've discovered I don't like note-taking in the moment. I'm very bad at it. When I went to lectures at university, I would just doodle things. I have notebooks and notebooks full of... I was once asked by a lecturer... the next tutorial, he said, okay, we talked about all this last week. Dale, why don't you read out your notes? And I looked down and I said, well, my notes are a drawing of a man holding a jar of honey with a beard of bees. And it was technically sort of relevant, but not what he was looking for. So that's the kind of note taker I am. I might take notes after the fact when I need to. There's really no point in me opening up a OneNote file because I will not type in it. So instead, enjoy Bela Lugosi in his most brilliant dramatic role. So last time we talked about some things. These notes will be less organized than when we were talking about wine country, but that's because I started off just covering stuff that we talked about last time, and then I started getting ideas. So this gets a little stream of consciousness-y. So bear with me. How's chat doing? How are we all doing? I haven't checked in a little while. Oh, dude, I have to edit my YouTube videos. There's no way I'm not getting tendinitis or flipping carpal tunnel or something. I'm already getting something where my pinky tingles sometimes. I hope that's not too bad. At least I'm not like an athlete, so I don't have to worry about it ruining my career. All right, we're all here. We're all good. So here are some notes from last time to cover what we talked about, but also it will get derailed, so be ready for that. Fayacre cuts off the north. So here we have the Fayacre. People who are familiar with my setting, which is probably most of you, know that this is a forest, which once you start walking... Whoa, hello. Once you start walking through it from south to north, you will either never make it through or you will end up in the Fayacre, which is my version of the Feywild. So it just keeps stretching northwards as far as the south is concerned. If you were to try to travel through it from north to south, however, it would just be a normal forest. But the effect of this has been that the south can't get through to the north, and they've become quite isolated in that regard. So a bunch of vampires have taken advantage of that, and they've moved into the north and taken control. They've taken... We discussed for a bit, and we landed on the idea that they, in the first sweep of seizing power, they killed all the powerful casters or major resistors. They infiltrated the church, took out any priests who were resistant to the idea that they've kind of pitched it as in the religion of this setting as established by my cleric player, there is no afterlife, and so a big part of that religion is the idea that your life is the reward for your life. Living a good life is the reward. And so resurrection as part of that is like, you're doing good, so you get another chance. You get to extend your life. You get to keep going. And so the vampires are kind of twisting that and saying, well, hey, we don't die, so we must therefore be doing good. We must be, this is our reward for being the best. That's kind of how they're twisting the religion in order to take control. We talked a little bit about how there is likely to be... I haven't zoomed in on this. Let me see real quick. Zoom, 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 zoom. I don't know what this is gonna look like on the stream, but we'll find out. There's this little city further up the top. Can you see that? No, you can't see that. Oh, no. gee, give me a second. I'm just gonna... Sorry, Bella Lugosi. Yeah, you see this up the top here? Wow. There's like a city up there, and then you've got the more rural kind of segments of the society. Okay, wait, okay, we'll just live with that. But yeah, so we've got this kind of separation of the city where they have the strongest hold, but there is a larger human population, or the sort of more rural country areas, where there are fewer people, but they're more likely to sort of understand the fear or the danger of the situation a little better. But we talked about how they might keep control over such a large region, and the sort of spies they might have. And then this is where it starts getting derailed, because I started writing, I was like, spies in the skies would be cool, like the Krebane from Dunland. Although my notes on my phone has corrected that to Finland, so don't trust birds in Finland. But the idea that, maybe not even full flocks of birds, but just like some birds are spies for the vampires, and so you can't trust any flock of birds. So you've got this image of like the people like farming, tilling the land, and there are just these crows hanging around in the trees watching them, and they're like, I don't know whether these are crows or whether these are crows though. And then I started thinking about, vampires and their connection with animals, the idea of like wolves kind of being controlled by vampires, or vampires turning into wolves, which is neat. Very classic, very Dracula. I was going to read that bit from Dracula where the wolves tear that woman to pieces. Very tense. But then I was like, what if, that's a cool option. Or also a cool option is the idea that these are just rumors that are circulated, that the vampires have birds telling them secrets, and that actually a lot of the spying is just done by people, spies they're people who like tattle because they want to help themselves and their family. That they might turn in their neighbor so that their family won't be chosen for the next blood tithe, which on its own indicates that I've decided there's a blood tithe, which is cool. I'm down for that. Down for a blood tithe. That sounds neat. Vampirism as a carrot, being drank as a stick is an actual note I've written here. Vampires wanting to limit how many other vampires they might be competing with at any given time, which is why there would be sort of a relatively small group of vampires. We talked about vampire narcissism, the fact that they want to, be in control. They want to have the power to promise someone, immortality, like I'll make you like me. But they also want the power to be able to take that away at any time. And they probably don't super want to actually give over that power, because they want that power. The more that you give it to... Yeah, we got Ben shouting, snitches! Yeah, those people are snitches, but also they're kind of sympathetic snitches, though. Which I think is cool. Someone's asking... Okay, Drek Fletcher's asking, or Sweden cold. So I didn't get the first half of that. It's cold in the north. It snows here. Tattle or be cattle. Yeah, that sort of stuff. Where's my... I need a tissue. Hi. So, handful of vampires vying to be sole survivor. Enforced curfew after sunset, ? And then I started thinking, oh man, I like that idea, but we also talked about a theater. We'll get to that in a minute. And, even though back in the day, theater, look, it's a thing, but we talked about social life being like an important thing. And for me, having a curfew was clashing with the idea of a social life. But then, and so I was like, gonna cut the curfew. But, brainwave, that's dumb. Why would we cut that when we like that? Both things are cool, so let's make both things happen. Curfew can't be out after sunset, can't be out after dark, unless you have, like, a pass. You have to have special permission, like a certificate that says, go ahead, you can be out after dark on these days or at these times or whatever. So it's like, yeah, you have to have leave to be out after dark in general. Ow, my knee. I've got a note here that says that things in my world tend to be, they're ordinary or they are magic, usually. And both of those things are seen as natural. But vampires, I wonder if the conceptual origin of vampires is unnatural, as in, like, maybe it's the result of someone who was screwing around with real magic. So I talk about how there's magic in my setting that is like deep, ever-present magic that's always kind of there. And then the stuff that wizards and player characters and whatever can tap into, that's kind of just the tiniest taste of what real magic can do. So the idea that real magic was being messed around with and someone screwed reality up to the point of creating vampires, and now vampires are a thing. I don't know whether I commit to that or not, but it sounds cool. I've got another note here that says, I was sort of speculating about what sort of things are in this Innistrad northern location, and I'm not sure about werewolves or not, even though I love werewolves, but definitely vampires, and I would say definitely ghosts, just by virtue of there probably being so much emotional death up here. I think there would be ghosts. Then I've got a note in all caps that says the resistance was recently wiped out, because I was like, the resistance, it was clashing for me because I've got resistances in other places, and it was like draining out both, you know? I feel like if you have too many things that are of similar ilk, you wind up in this place where neither gets to shine. So I was like, that's so, wow, what a bummer. What's my last, like, section of human society? What are my words? Going to be if I get rid of that. So I decided, we can have the best of both worlds again. The resistance was a thing, but they were recently wiped out, and there's only a small number of scattered leaders still remaining, and they're all in hiding. Vampires. How do vampires get the public to think that they're cool? We've talked about this, and I've got written down festivals and parades and sort of saintly style holy days. So, you know, you get these days where, you know, there are performers and there are parades in the streets. Everyone gets the day off work. There are grand jousts. There are gladiatorial sort of competitions for the paladins to compete against one another. Everybody gets a night pass on that day, and at sunset, the lord or the lady or whoever makes an appearance, and it's very exciting. Kind of this idea of like, they throw these huge lavish parties, and people associate them, at least in the city, with celebration. Paladins, championed by the vampires, was a very cool idea that came up last time. We've got the phrase Knight of the Western Raven from Magnus Mendax from last time. I just think that's really neat. The old resistance used pamphlets. This is where we start getting into sort of fresh ideas, bouncing off ideas from last time. So this is where it gets really sort of just train of thoughty. The old resistance used pamphlets to disseminate information, so the vampires shut down schools to keep the populace illiterate. Being caught teaching your kids how to read is a punishable offense. The region is split between the vampires. There's less desirable holdings in the country, they're large and less densely populated, so even though they're bigger, they're more difficult to manage in regards to the blood tithe and like making sure that insurrections don't slip through the cracks and whatever. So that kind of pushes for infighting between the vampires in terms of, they all are sharing power, but some of them are getting the best sort of piece of cake. The idea that one of the vamps who's in charge is also constantly being blamed for any insurrections that grow in the border regions because they just can't monitor it all. There were previously more vamps, like 6 or 7 of them, but these 4, so I've decided there are 4 who are like in charge that everyone knows about. There were previously like 6 or 7 of them, but these 4 banded together and had a coup d'etat, struck those saints from the record, and this has to have been a while before the latest big push for rebellion. So that's a while back, but it's still like a thing. There's a theater, a human theater, which tours. We talked about this last time, and I was like, I don't know if they tour because we need a location, like a place that they can secure as being a safe place to talk. I changed my mind. Dale from the past was an idiot. I don't believe that for a second. I'm a genius. So I've changed my mind. The theater does tour their sort of pro-vampire show, but the way that they're sort of enabling that uprising, right, is that they alter dialogue between the shows depending on the location they go, based on what they've learnt or what needs to be passed along as a message. So it's like they have characters that stand in for real people, and anyone in the know knows which character indicates what person. And so when they change the dialogue, that's when you have to look for, you know, the information. It's like, so-and-so says this, you know, and so I like the idea of like the actors who they do this pro-vampire show, and so they're actually really close with one of the lords or lady vampires or whoever, who's like this total hedonist, who's like really into the idea of these actors telling these great stories about them. You know, they brag about things while they're at dinner with these actors, and so when the show is safely away from that protectorate, then the actors can kind of weave the info they've learned into the dialogue to be picked up. The plays that they put on, they're expected to be mocking neighboring sort of saints or vampires. So it takes a little while. This is where it gets, I'm starting to come up with story ideas. So it takes a little while for this border vampire, who's a little bit on the outs already. They're watching this and it's like, oh great, they're making fun of hedonist vampire, because the character who's playing them is an idiot. But then after a while they start to realize that the hedonist character isn't just an idiot, they're literally giving away vamp secrets during these productions. And so Border Vamp can kind of pick up on that change. That's an idea I like, but it is also a plot point, so not really what we typically do here. I've got a note here that says that the vampires can't just execute someone in a show of terrible power. Like they could, but it wouldn't be as useful to them and their branding as if they just make a performance of being, you know, very just and merciful, but in a way that still ends in a death. So if they catch someone who's like, you know, working against them, they probably hand the sentencing over to maybe the priesthood that we talked about last time. We talked about priests who, since the sort of resistant priests were eliminated early on, the priests that are left kind of, they're a big group of people who are really gripped by that sort of carrot of vampiracy? I've forgotten all my vampire words. But that idea of like, the vampires are pure because they keep living. So, you know, if we're good enough, we might be chosen to keep on living too. So that idea that the priesthood is kind of in the clutches of the vampires. We're nearly at the end of these notes, by the way. If there were 7 regions, I've said here, say 3 in the city and 4 in the country, the outer 4 turned on the center, ousted them. They tell the people that those sort of city vampires, their life journey finally ended, their good work is finished, they've done it. But then, so they take over. But then now that they've got just the 4 of them, they're splitting up the whole region again, but these people all still want the city. So they sort of redivide it up differently. And they all want a piece of that city. And so it's like really this one border vamp who's left on the outs and is left with too large a region to easily govern, whereas the others might have big chunks of country, but they've also got a piece of the city. So, you know, I want, the reason I want this kind of underdog vampire on the border is because I want to give players an opportunity to, maybe they'll team up with this vampire in order to get rid of the other ones, but, you know, leaving room for, this isn't a good guy, they're just a person that you're teaming up with for the time being. And the final note I've made here, vampire who made those vampires, so these 4 vampires and the ones who have already been overthrown, there should be a vampire that made them that's still living a life, like a hermit further north where people usually shouldn't be able to survive. Someone mentioned last time the idea of a vampire on a frozen throne, which was cool. But I kind of picture this person to be like, a little bit like Godric from True Blood. Does anyone remember Godric? I love Godric. So anyway, we can choose to talk about today, because I don't think we'll get through both. So let's pick one and then we can do another stream another time. Either we nail down some major sort of NPC important figures for the human factions, which would include the theater people, the sort of broken resistance, the paladins who are championed by the vampires, and the priesthood. That would be the human talk. If we talk about that, we'd be nailing that stuff down. Or vampire talk, where we sort of nail down who these 4 saintly figures are who are sort of running the whole place, the tyrannical leaders. So do people want humans or vampires? I'll start setting up what are they called? The poll, a sketch poll, a scratch poll, you know what I mean. Boop, 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 boop. Straw poll! That's what I'm looking for. I was close. Humans or vampires? Suki, you are human. I am vampire. But Bill, I had to do the thing you told me not to do. True blood. All right. Hello. Boop. 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 Let me drop that in the chat real quick. Y'all can start your voting. I'll drop it in the chat again in a little bit for people who miss it, but I'm gonna get quiet and boring for a second because I have to lean. I left my glasses downstairs. I have to lean in to read the chat. I like Jared's suspicion that it'll be like the time I did a poll regarding giants or krakens, and kraken won the vote, so I did a video about giants because I was like, well, that means that giants are less cool, so we got to make them cooler. I don't know. This is not a reverse psychology poll, although you are right to distrust me. People are asking, what was the context again? This vote is about whether today in this stream, whether we're going to sort of nail down some NPCs from the human factions to really flesh out the human side of the Forgotten North, or whether we're going to talk about vampires and nail some vampire NPCs or bad guys to flesh out the vampiric side. Vampiric! That's the word I was looking for before. There's not really. Apollo is asking whether we think that there's an East Berlin, West Berlin kind of a thing going on because it's the one city is divided between vampires. I don't think so. I think that people are allowed to freely travel, but it's just sort of probably mostly within the context of the blood tithe, I think is the most important thing. It's like everyone who is registered as living within your specific sort of zone has to, it's their turn to come and give up blood for the leaders. I don't know whether they would frame it in the context of you are feeding them, they are eating your blood, but yeah. But if we talk about the vampires, we can talk about that more. We've got Stuart saying, the curfew is giving me serious Tam O'Shanter vibes. It's dangerous to be out at night. Yeah, that's the good stuff. Alright, I'm gonna post the straw poll one more time. Give it another minute or so, and then we can see where the vote lands. See, Rory, we can't do Montagues versus Capulets because we very explicitly did that for Wine Country the last time when we were talking about Druff and Derek in these streams. It ended up being... We didn't have names for the families for a long time, and we just called them the Montagues and the Capulets until we came up with them. Which, of course, resulted in there being sort of a Romeo and Juliet side plot. Christopher Williams, no one calls it the Forgotten North. It's literally only on a player DM level that it would be called that. Within the setting, the people of the North, the placeholder name that I've got at the moment is Rum. But in the South, they've straight up just kind of forgotten that it exists. Like, there might be some very old records that refer to Rum, but people don't really remember it. They just talk about the Fayeager as if that's what goes on north. Like, that's it. That's the entirety. Undead bureaucrats. That is damn right. All right, let's check out this straw poll. Let's see what we got. Results. Whoa, vampires, 63%. So we are talking about vampires today. Thank you very much for your votes. All right, so where are we going to start with the vampire? I wrote some questions about this. All right, so if we're going to talk about vampires today, here are some stipulations. I want at least half of the vampires to be not men, because I think it's very easy. We've got Dracula in our brain, so it's very easy to, like, make everyone dudes. Let's not do that. And I probably want half of them to be human, but I think it's neat to chuck in a couple races that you don't expect to be vampires. Like, do we want a half-orc vampire in the mix, or do we want a gnome vampire in the mix? That sort of thing. So what kind of races are we looking at for the non-humans as well? Do keep in mind, in that regard, that we're not building them to be silly. We're building them to be big and bad and dangerous and, frightening and what have you. So, and powerful. So, if you just want a gnome vampire because you think that that's like a wacky combo, or because gnomes have inexplicably reached meme status, then you are headed in the wrong direction. So do think about it properly. But I think there's room for some really cool, unexpected combinations that still make very, like, honestly cool vampiric figures. So let's think about that. What was my other question? I didn't write my other question down, but I did have another question. We know that we're going to have a vampire who's sort of the more border region vampire. We know that we're going to have a vampire who's sort of a hedonistic one in the central regions, who's kind of a doofus who keeps giving away secrets. Shadow says, can I use similar idea in a campaign I'm running? Yeah, any of the ideas here. I mean, y'all are generating half of the ideas that we come up with here. I'm just curating. So this is, public domain. Go for it. Pew, pew, pew. Orc Vamp, Tusks and Fangs, says Klaus. Klaus, who is an excellent DM who runs for the Brunt Scales in Back to the Story, which is a D&D actual play podcast that you all should check out and that I guested on. Halfling could be interesting. Goliath. Oh man, y'all are coming up with stuff so fast. I gotta scroll back up for a minute and see what y'all have said. Jake says, get some Castlevania Season 2 vibes in there. Yes. Total Pixie Vampire, nah. Drow Vampire is iconic. That's, you know what? You're not wrong. Fallen Azimar Vampire. Peter says, seriously? Dragon Vampire. We're getting, I don't know if we've had anything mentioned twice yet where I'm up to scrolling down. We've got a couple mentions of a Goliath vampire. Oh, this is, I mean, a side concept, but Albert suggests just a weird thought, but the official, like, out at night pass might be like a choker, so that any vampires who are wandering around and looking for a feed see them and go, ugh, okay. They've got permission. This is official. A grey-skinned tiefling that makes it hard to tell if they're a vampire or not, says Jared. Vampire fairies do not exist. Vampires have to be a sort of, player racy thing. Do we think any race has immunity to... Because I was going to say, like, a vampire is sort of human-based, you know what I mean? But I mean, like, a living and dying race. Whereas fae don't die. They are immortal and separate, so they feel like a totally different category of being. So I don't think that a fae could be vamped. But again, not least of all because you cannot get into the Fae Acre going north to south, so they're not encountering Fae. But yeah, it doesn't read as something that would work to me. But are there player races that you think wouldn't be able to be vamped? Because maybe that's just something that I'm totally not even thinking of. Someone got their comment blocked or held for approval because they swore. I have to click approve for the F word. Oh. Everyone's gone in really hard with the exotic races. Like very few of these, apart from Drow, basically. You're all more or less referencing stuff that's not in the player's handbook, which is interesting to me because I, not exclusively, but I tend towards using, player character races from the player's handbook. I like to bring everything back to the player's handbook just because you know that all that stuff was created at the same time, so the headspace was the same for that creation. So if I want everything to feel coherent, I tend to sort of limit it to the player's handbook, but that doesn't mean that we have to. Yeah, no, you're right. Warforged cannot be a vampire. That's true. Hayden says just a good high elf. Don't mind that idea. So we've had some full orc. I see a lot of people now are sort of saying dwarf, or I'm seeing dwarf a lot. But part of me is hesitant to do dwarf just because we built up the Capulets, I believe, from our wine country were dwarves. And, it's one of those weird things where it feels like they're too close together for me. But that's only because that's the stuff that we've been talking about in these streams rather than because they're actually, too much. Also because one of my players has a backstory that's all tied up in dwarves. So I'm like, there's so many dwarves, which is fine, actually. But I just feel like there's a lot of dwarves right now. Female dwarf. Okay, so we do have a lot of dwarves though. So people want a dwarf. So we can talk about it. We can talk about a dwarf vampire. I'm not going to withhold that from the people. If that's what the people want, then we'll talk about a dwarf vampire. Okay, I'm going to make another straw poll real quick because this has been much more. I thought that I would get a clearer idea of what folks want. So let's see. Let's split this up into a couple of options. So we'll say we're talking about 4 vampires. We'll say 2 are humans, 2 are not human. Let's see. Or a 3 human. Do we want 2 or 3 human? Just real quick. The first 10 answers will give me my answer. Oh, that's an interesting statement. I had to lean in. I have to try to work out how to say your name. Klepto Kobold says, I don't think that cold-blooded races could be vampires. I can see that. I can agree with that. That's cool. 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 2, 2, 2. There's a lot of 2s. Okay, so 2 are human, 2 are not human. And let's just assume that our, what's his face? What is his name? The guy I was just talking about him. The gentleman whom I love from True Blood. Where's my phone? What's his name? I've forgotten his name already. My head keeps saying Marco. I think he looks like a Marco, but he's not a Marco. His name is Godric. Similar. The Godric style vamp further north is probably human. Maybe they're even the being who was messing around with magic. Maybe they got turned into a vampire. Who knows? Maybe we will never. Vampire races. Do you see how weird my arm is bending while I'm trying to avoid bumping the microphone? So, we got dwarf that comes up a lot. We got orc. People seem to like the idea of a full-blood orc rather than a half-orc. I can get down with that. There's a knock on my door, but I'm streaming, so I can't really go and answer it. I don't know if anyone in my house heard. I might be the only one who heard. That's bad. Well, I'm ghosting them. So, what are some other races that you'll shouted out? Goliath came up a lot. What are some other good? Where's my? Give me a second. Things are falling. Everything's fine. Hello. How useful is that bookshelf? Oh, love it. All right, just to make sure that we're not forgetting anyone. All right, let's see. This is how we're going to do this. It's going to be chaos, and I'm going to love it. So, I'm going to... are people telling me to go answer the door? No! My glasses are all the way downstairs. Are you kidding me? I'm not going down and then upstairs for you. No! All right, no, everyone, just hold for a second. What we're going to do is I'm going to read out each of the races in the player's handbook for starters, and then we can move from there. Because I feel like I only really want one, like, exotic race. You know? We got to keep it kind of chill. That's just my own personal rule. Do whatever you want for yours, but for me, that's like, I like it to feel sort of, yeah, cohesive. So, dwarf we've already got on the list. We've got elves, so let's just say elf for now. What's going to happen is I'm going to read out the race, and whatever the first answer is, whether it's yes or no, if it's yes, it goes into the straw poll. If it's no, it doesn't. Just whatever the first answer is. So get ready. All right. So, high elf. This delay is longer than I thought. It's coming. I can feel it coming. Okay, well, this system might not work for this level of delay. Okay, we've got a yes on the high elf. Great. Wood elf. Type the name of the race and yes or no so that I know that it's for the right thing. It is chaos. This is how we run things here. Do you all remember when I did that trap stream and I just opened up a Google Doc for all of you to edit? Oh! That was a good time. Since you're all gonna have to write the name of the race anyway, I'm just gonna keep going. Dark elf. Halfling. We won't get into the subcategories of halfling. Skipping over humans. Dragonborn. Gnome. Half elf. We'll skip half orc because we already put orcs in there. Tiefling. Those are all the races in the player's handbook. All elves, no. Okay, let's scroll up to the top of the wood elf. Because I'm sticking to my guns. Only the first one that came up. Wood elf, nah. Alright. So no wood elf. That is fair. Drow have started to trickle in. No to a drow. Ooh. Gotten quick. Let's see. Was halfling next or was... I don't remember the order that we went in. Halfling was next, wasn't it? Yes. Yeah. So halfling... See, this is... I don't know if I can trust that first dragonborn, but let's see. So halfling got a yes. We'll chuck in a halfling. Boop, 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 boop. This must be so much fun for you. What's after halfling? Halfling is... Excuse me? Excuse me? Stop that. It's really hard to find the first one when the thing keeps trying to skip down to current chat. I believe we got a Dragonborn, yes. So let's check Dragonborn in there. Dragonborn. Do you get baby borns in other countries? Baby born. Still on the halflings, still on the dragonborn. The first gnome that I see is a no gnomes. We've got, what was after, because some of y'all I think are just skipping ahead and cheating the system. But let me see what comes after gnome. See, that tiefling can't be trusted. I don't think I'd said tiefling yet. Half-elf, no. Literally only one person seems to have responded to half-elf. So we don't have a half-elf. The next tiefling is a yes. So we have a tiefling option. Tiefling. Am I just making up songs for all the races? And tiefling was the last one, wasn't it? So, we have our straw poll. Create poll. And here's the link. And let's all vote. Remember, the most votes and the second most votes will both... Oh no, she mentioned gnomes. Yeah, look, I'm just giving up. I think it's kind of a Streisand effect, you know? It's like, I don't really care about gnomes that much one way or the other, but if I leap on board the joke that like gnomes are horrible and we can never bring up gnomes, then people just bring them up all the time, which just is such a waste of time. So gnomes are a thing in my bard is a gnome, you know, so I'm not playing that game anymore. All right, so there's the straw poll. There it is. You can vote. Number 1 and number 2 in the voting will be our vampires. Ha! wonder what that person was knocking on the door for. I hope it wasn't important. They tapped once very lightly. I feel like if it was important, they would have, like, knocked again. If they had knocked a second time, I would have gone to answer the door. Rest assured. But I get the distinct feeling that it's our shy postman who doesn't really want us to answer the door. He just wants to leave the package and go. Ugh. Anyone want a snack? Got some lollies. These ones are shaped like bears. Yeah, Jason, maybe they're not as interesting as other options might be, but, you know, it's whatever people vote for. Yeah, Grace, I kind of agree that it would be tougher for a vampire to feed on a dragonborn, but, I mean, let's see. Let's see where this all goes. There's so many options here. It could be any of them. My house is going to be demolished to build a highway. No, they wouldn't come and knock on the door for that. They would, what is it they would put? A notice up in a cupboard that's locked with a sign that says, "Beware of the leopard." Something along those lines. In the basement or... I quite like our shy postman. I don't know if he's actually shy. Maybe he just doesn't want to talk to us. Wow. I've actually not turned on the results, so seeing everyone in chat talking about it is dramatic. Oh my gosh, why is the split so even? People, we gotta keep voting. I'm posting the link again so that people who missed it can... The orc option is of orcish blood. It's not confirmed whether or not it's a full orc or a half orc at this point, but we'll learn that once we actually... If it gets a place, then we'll talk about it. These are meant to fit together. I haven't done it yet, though. Should I try building something with my lollies? I don't think this is gonna work. Here. Ugh. Is this what you meant to do? That's what it says on the packet. Disused lavatory in the basement. Behind a bricked wall, yeah. If we were talking about Vogon constructor fleets, I can quote that. I did an audition monologue that was Vogon constructor fleets once. This is insane. I can't believe how much change is going on. I might have to run this like an Australian election, and at the end, just cut out the ones that clearly aren't winning, and revote with just the top options. Because everybody's vote counts. That's the thing. It's a good system. If you can vote for your guy, but we're gonna vote again, just so that you actually get your vote to count. I'm sad that Orc isn't winning, but let's. How many people have voted? 170. How many people are in chat right now? There's 250 people in chat. Once we hit 200, I know that's a big ask, but if you're watching, I need you to vote right now. I need you to vote. Yeah, instant runoff voting. I need you to vote if you haven't already. Once we hit 200 votes, we'll take the top 4 and we'll vote again. Okay, 200 might be too much to ask. Let's make it 185. Ooh, a real voting system, says Magic 7. just tuned in, currently we're talking about vampire sort of bad guys / NPCs who are running this region in the north. We're deciding at the moment what races 2 of those vampires are going to be. There's 4 vampires who run this place. 2 of them are human. Chat decided that 2 of them are non-human, and now we're deciding what races they might be. So we're voting to figure out what the top 2 results are, and then we'll go from there. Have we hit 185? Oh, we have! Oh my gosh, we're at 198. I should have been paying more attention. All right, 99. Where's that 200 that I wanted? Yeah, boom! So the top 4 options are Goliath, Tiefling, Half-Elf, and Halfling. All right, let's make another straw poll. Back. Yeah. There. Yeah. Vampire races. Take 2. All right. Goliath. It was a high elf, a tiefling, and a halfling. Halfling. Create poll. And here we go again. Everybody ready? Boom. See, that's just it. I do think that a dragonborn vampire would be very cool. But I also don't know whether I can sort of conceptualize a dragonborn becoming a vampire. So those are 2 conflicting thoughts in my mind that I like both of them. It's too bad that the orc didn't make it in. I kind of like the idea of an orc vampire. Maybe later on my own, when it's not on the stream, maybe I'll just change my mind and decide to shove an orc in there. Although we do already have Dakova in Wine Country. We did just... So it's a similar thing to the dwarf in terms of we just did that, which isn't fair. It's not fair to be like, oh, but we just did a half-orc. But I am of the mind of like, where are all the humans? You know? Which kind of informs this method of thinking that's like, but we've got so many half-orcs already when I've only got 1. Which is dangerous thinking if we start applying it to the real world. Just keep that in mind. Oh, Magnus says if Goliath wins, you have to make him Godbrand, which is a character from Castlevania, if you haven't watched it. If you're squeamish, if you don't like blood or gore, maybe don't watch Castlevania. But, you know, I had a lot of fun watching it. Ooh, Chris B says I defeated an orc vampire in the arena once. Sick. Akeem says, make it 5 vampire lords. I will not. I will not do that. Because I feel like the number 4 is right, you know? Did the number of people watching get higher after I said we need more votes? It's interesting watching the results right now. I don't want to say things out loud because I don't want to like start skewing people's votes, but we're taking this to at least 200 again, by the way. I want them numbers. I can't do a Godbrand impression. I can't do one. I can't remember anything he says. I can kind of hear his voice in my head, but also it might just be Stellan Skarsgård in my head, which... Make 2 of them tieflings? See, now that would be tricky stuff. In my setting, the sort of more exotic of the player races, although, you know, sort of come from further east. Ooh, I don't like some of the sort of real world equivalences that are coming from that. But like tieflings and dragonborns are... Tieflings are more common in the east sort of region where my players won't be for a very long time. Dragonborns you only really find in the capital or further east. Yeah. just because I needed a way to like separate them out a little more. It was just random choices. These streams usually, I often plan for them, Thomas, to go for an hour, but then in actuality, they usually go for an hour and a half or 2 hours. But you can feel free to go to sleep at any time. This will be VOD. Yes. I do have errands I'm meant to run today, so hopefully we won't get too caught up in it. But if we get caught up in it, I'm right there with you, you know, so... All right, where are our votes at? We're at 177. I'm going to post the link again. I'm taking us to 200, y'all. We got to get everyone... Voting is mandatory. This is an Australian election, all right? Voting is mandatory. Runoff votes. Yeah, I know that Stoker's Dracula is, fear of the East, xenophobic stuff, and so it is thematically appropriate, but I don't want to become Bram Stoker in my writings. I don't want to be, Lovecraft. 96, 97, 98, 99, 200! All right, now winners are Goliath and Halfling, with 70 votes and 53 votes, respectively. Congrats to them. Congrats. I think it's very funny that we have collectively chosen the tallest and the smallest. So that's neat. That's neat. And the other thing I like about it is that if I still find myself in 2 weeks' time, if I look back and I'm still attached to the idea of an orc vampire, I can just replace the Goliath with an orc, and it will probably be similar. But all right. Goliath wins twice, says Silverfish. Yeah, you're right. So, hello. Let's do this. So, where do I keep putting my phone? There it is. I found it. So, we have... Why is there so much dust? Everything is confusion. So, we've got our 4 vampires, 2 are humans. What is happening here? Why so much dust? So, 2 times... humans. 1 times Goliath. 1 times halfling. All right. So, no, says Luke. I'm sorry. This is, it's how it works. Swings and roundabouts. But, we know that one of these vampires is going to be sort of an underdog-seeming character, running the border regions and kind of getting kicked around. So, theoretically weaker than the other vampires. We know that one has to be a hedonistic central figure. So, for hedonism, actually, you know what? Let's do the gender spectrum first. I'm going to split up these humans into 1 times human and 1 times human, which now just means I could just have a list, but I do not. So, human the first. Are they a central vampire or are they a border vampire? Here's that pause. That pause while I wait for chat. People think the Goliath might be the underdog or the halfling might be the underdog. That is interesting. Think about as well the fact that these vampires are, championing paladins. They have this imagery of sort of, at the risk of stealing from Colville, strength and saintliness. Which being a halfling does not necessarily take away from, but... Okay, so people think the first human is central, so I will write that down. Central? Do we think... Where do we think they fall I've forgotten how to spell. Where do we think that they fall, this first human, on the sort of gender spectrum? See, now I want to take some inspiration from Castlevania, but I don't want to dip into it too much. You know, it's that old thing of if you want to steal from stuff and get away with it, you really got to steal from enough places. So I don't want to keep going into Castlevania. I do want a flavor of Castlevania, but I don't want it to be too much of that. Okay, people seem to think that the first human is a woman. All right. So let's leave that one there for the moment. Second human, central or border? Thomas, don't come in here making attack helicopter jokes, alright? We don't have time for that. Okay, I've got a call for the border, central, border, central, border, central. All right, so that one's kind of an even split. So let's say that this is someone who maybe has less of a share of the city center, but is, you know, they're somewhere in the middle. So share of both city and country. Oh, we like both kinds, country and western. Yeah, all right. And where do they fall on the gender spectrum? Someone is asking what border and central means. We're talking about, so the vampires have split up this whole kind of northern sector. This whole place has been split up into different regions or sectors that the vampires are ruling over. So they've split it up ostensibly evenly, but obviously the better. We've got calls for male or non-binary. Yeah, quite a bit of both. Male leaning. Yeah, okay, so we can put a little he, they, and if it becomes more clear as things move along, I can shift it. Yeah, so they've ostensibly sort of split it evenly, but some people have the very populated city area, because this is north, sort of quite cold and harsh, and so it becomes an interesting question of, like, there are some places that are very populated and other places that are very sparsely populated. So you might have a region that's very big, but because it's less densely populated, you've got a difficulty of, like, governing that region in a lot of ways. Yeah, people seem to like he, they. Cool. Neat. Let's move on from them. So, the Goliath, central or border? I like, so like a cold Western Australia. Not exactly what I had in mind, but I mean, you're not wrong if we're talking about like harsh and low density of population and pretty large. A bit of a split here, but there is kind of a push for border Goliath. Like there's not an insignificant amount of central popping up. So let's discuss this one a little bit. If the Goliath is on the border, then that likely comes down to the idea of you know, it being an unusual race to have been vamped. None of these people can be totally powerless. You know, these are four people or vampires who grouped together in order to overthrow the previous sort of central leading vampires. So these were all people who were on the outs at one time who have now shifted their position in the world. So if the Goliath is on the border, then that means that it's probably coming down to the fact that this is an unusual race. But then how does that work? How does that work when this is a Goliath who, at least if you're following rules as written, very physically strong, given vampire strength on top of that? So what would be pushing them to be on the outs in this group that bonded over being kind of underdogs all together at one time? Whereas if they're in the center, it's more likely to be tied in with that idea of, the sort of combat, gladiatorial, blah, 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 which is much more, buying into the tropes of the Goliath. And I'm getting the vibe that a lot of people want to kick the tropes for this particular choice. Jordan, this is world building stuff. It's campaign building stuff. It's we zoom in on an area on my map and we say, what do we know about this? What do we not know? And we ask questions until we do know. Oh, that's interesting. Not weaker, just less politically savvy, says, is it Larry? It is Larry. I really need my glasses. Larry brings up an excellent point. I think that is probably likely, depending on, what Goliaths are like in your particular setting. There's maybe that idea that they don't mingle as much with sort of the common races. And so then you end up in this place where it's like, you have your alliance, your group that you're working with, but because you're not maneuvering and getting in on them machinations early politically, you just find yourself with a border region. That is possible. I refuse to get my glasses. I will die on this hill for no good reason. Yeah, okay, I think that works. So we're saying Goliath is border region rather than central. All right, neat. Where do they fall on the gender spectrum? Remember, we do have a hard limit on 2 men. But, we'll find out. My cousin Melissa is here saying, I will text your siblings and your mother to make you get your glasses. And to that I say, YouTube just blocked a comment because it said woman. Yeah. I see why it's doing that. It's in the spirit, but it's a little confused. Female, female, big beefy boy. Female, female. I like that divide. Oh, okay. It's also blocking just the statement man. So, I mean, we're in an interesting place here. Tomboy. That's okay. I'm going to tell you a story right now. When I was first in kindergarten, so my oldest sister, Raywin, taught me how to read before I went to school. So I went in already knowing how to read and write a little bit. And we went in, and on the first day there was like a form. It's pretty messed up. There was like a form that we had to fill. It was just like a, this is who I am thing. And it was like, it was already filled out for us because people weren't expected to read. And it said, my name is Dale, or whatever your name was. And then it had a little thing that was, I am a, and there was a thing that was a tickable box that was like boy, or a tickable box girl. And I crossed out girl and wrote tomboy, which is already depressing because it means at the time I already was like, I kind of knew that it was like a negative thing to be girly. So I was like, I'm not a girl, I'm a tomboy. And I got, they crossed it out and they were like, no, you are a girl. I was like, all right. But I'm telling you this because tomboy was listed as a gender just then. And that's how I thought back in the day too. So there you go. But woman got the most votes just then. So we now have 2 women. We have a he, they, and we have the halfling. So are they central or are they sort of border central sort of a thing? So if we give them a central region, then it's split up between the human woman and the halfling. If we give them a border central region, then that means that the human woman has kind of the best space. So do we split up the city between them, or do we have it be, she's front and center, the halfling and the other human are sort of half-half? Central, 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 central. This one seems pretty conclusive. So the halfling gets a central share. Where do they fall on the gender spectrum? Yeah, split for the intrigue. Yeah, I like it. No, the PCs are not going to be vampires, or there's no intent for the PCs to be vampires. I don't even know if or when the PCs will ever encounter this place. This is just for fun stuff. So if I'm actually building out, the next session for my game, I don't tend to do that on stream. I just work out what the next thing that's going to happen is. But this is just looking at the broader world, which, I've got a map. And I have some very vague ideas of what's going on where. But this is like just a fun exercise of zooming in as a group and coming up with ideas. That was me trying to catch a thing as it went past that YouTube had blocked. Mail, 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 mail. We got a lot of males here, so the halfling is a man. All right. Sweet. So, there we are. That's a neat place to start. So, we have a central woman who is a human vampire. We have a sort of city and country split human who identifies with pronouns he or they. We have a Goliath who sort of is stuck with the border region, who's a woman, and we have a halfling who shares the central region and is a man. So, we've got those. So we know that the Goliath, she's a bit of an underdog. We'll say a political underdog. And so then we get to emphasize that idea that the the biggest benefit of being in a central region is that you really get the humans who, or the sort of non-vampires, who think of you as benevolent. You know, you're the one who throws the parties, you're the one who protects them, you're the one who is good, and, you know, it's very sort of papal in some aspects. But then if you're in the border, that's where people are more likely to be scared of the vampires. So there's that political power of like, yeah, the Goliath might be able to, she can come and bash your brains in, but that's a one-on-one situation. When it comes down to, she's got no ground level support. Whereas the ones in the city, a lot of the people are going to be on their side. So that's neat. Underdog. Who's going to be our hedonist? Who hangs out with the theater peeps and spells all the secrets? The humans are Katharine Hepburn and David Bowie. I actually love that. I love that, Jack Fletch. I'm going to make a note of it just in case. What's the time? Where am I? All right. Well, we've reached the 1.5 hour mark and we're still in it. She got no cult. He, they boy is the hedonist. The halfling! We've got a lot of people who are like, it's the halfling. Adam says, vampires are very cosmopolitan, and I agree. None of them want to be stuck, like, camping. Ugh. We got a lot of hedonist halflings. I freed you. I freed your swearing. Alright, so people pretty definitively want the halfling to be the hedonist. Which is interesting. I was thinking yesterday about the theatre, but it's so interesting to me that every comment that has been held for review has just been people using the F word. Look at me, I'm so innocent today. What was I talking about? I was thinking about the theatre yesterday, which, by the way, I've got some name suggestions. I don't know if we want to say that till we're talking about the human factions, but when I was thinking about this idea of them touring and changing things as they move around to fit the region that they're performing to, and also the sort of information they're giving out, in Cood, I was thinking about the idea of, they have their set role that's like, this person plays the leading man, this person plays the leading woman, and every time they go to the new protectorate, whoever the vampire who's in charge of that place is played by the leading person. So it's like you come in and you've got the halfling, but they're being played by this super handsome, like chiseled jaw human. That's just a little bit amusing to me. What are we saying about? I really do feel like one of the vampires should be stuck at a really young age because of when they were vamped. Because we didn't choose an elf vampire. That could be fun. Tom Cruise plays the halfling. Well, no, but that's just that. I mean, that's height appropriate. Halfling hedonist is hella tropey. But you know, it does have that thing of like, this is a trope that can still be fun. You know, it's not a tired trope, which I think is neat. That concept of just drinking, not wine, of course, drinking blood instead, but it's the squirrel. Okay, this is another diversion, but from what I understand, my sister, who can understand more Japanese than I can, was reading this packet for me, and it seems that it's mostly bears, but there's like one in there that is a different shape, and I got a squirrel. We think the Goliath is really young. That was my jaw. Did you hear that? Tom Cruise was a vampire, wasn't he? He did an interview. Now that would just be really embarrassing if the hedonist halfling was also a spy master and was the one who was spilling secrets to the theater. That would just be, ugh, get good. There's a split on which vampires should be young. We don't have to have a young vampire. It was just an idea. Oh, have the halfling be a childish hedonist. Have him prefer younger blood. We're still really split on this youth issue. I mean, there's also the possibility of them being very young, but in the sense of being like, you know, 17 or 18. You know, when you see a 17 or 18-year-old person, you're like, yeah, you're an adult, but look at you, you're a baby. Like, you know, you've got that thing of simultaneously being able to respect them as a human adult, but there's that element of like, you're so young. So that could work and meet the best of both worlds, because there's a big split on this. Who turned whom and why, Ethan? There is a fifth vampire who's older than all of them, kind of like Godric from True Blood, who's further north and doesn't really dally in this political scheming nonsense. He's just like, oh man, but he probably is the one who vamped them. I keep thinking of him as a he, but that's probably because I think of him as Godric from True Blood, but you know. You think whoever looks the youngest is also the oldest of the vampires? That could be the case. What Steve? Did you miss the beginning? When I start my streams, I always come in and do a bit of reading while people trickle in, and I did some reading from Twilight, and it was exactly the part in the book when she asks him how old he is, and he says 17. She says, how long have you been 17? I like it better in the book because it's just very casual, like they're just in the car having a conversation, whereas in the movie it's very dramatic and they're in the woods. Don't get me wrong, I love the first Twilight movie. You'll need to understand, I adore it. It is flawed, but I love it, unironically. a really good point. That's a really good point, Stuart. The 17-year-old Godric thing. Yes, Godric in True Blood looked really like he wasn't just like, yeah, he was like young. He was like not like, he was like a teen. So we could just do that. And then we fulfill like a bunch of these things that have been brought up. It'd be a vampire who looks really young. It'd be the oldest vampire is the one that looks the youngest. And like, we could do that. And it would be like Godric from True Blood. The idea of a vampire being older than you expect. We have this idea. Well, which, by the way, I mean, where do we stand on the Draculian concept of, Dracula when Jonathan first meets him looks older. He looks like he's, retiring age or whatever. He looks like he could be an old count. Excuse me. But then he gets to London. It's very cool. I won't, spoil it because I might read it at some point at the start of one of these streams. But he drinks a bunch of people on the way to England, and by the time he gets off the boat, he's a young man. So it's this idea of the longer you go without drinking blood, the sort of older you get. You're getting older, you're aging, but then you drink the blood and your youth is rejuvenated. Where do we stand on that? Because then they're all gonna age up and down. Oh, Stuart was agreeing with someone else. Well, whoever said that. Melissa is claiming that I was ever iffy about Twilight. I was not. There was an era where I hadn't read Twilight, and then I saw the movie and everyone was like hype and like, this is so much fun. I was like, that does seem like fun. And then I read the books and I was like, this is cool. Drink too much and you turn into a baby. It doesn't work quite like that. Some people are saying it's cool and some people are saying nah. I think that what it is that you age normally if you're not drinking. But then when you drink, you go back to the base age where you were turned. Yeah, I kind of vibe that sort of a deal as well, Apollo. The idea of you're able to gauge blood consumption by, how youthful they're looking right now. Whereas Godric is a different case. We're calling him Godric now. We're going to need to find a different name for him because he can't just be Godric from True Blood. But that idea that he's different. He's like the first or whatever. And so it doesn't work that way for him. He's just stuck where he was at 17. Maybe he was a sorcerer. Maybe this is what happened when he broke magic. Yeah, I like that idea too, Ian. I don't think it should be so much age as much as healthy appearance. That's true. And that idea of, having a healthy glow when you've had a good feed. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not committed to that concept of the aging and de-aging though. It is just a really sick part of Dracula. Cool. All right, let's start naming people. People always like naming people. Let's do that. So we have our Katharine Hepburn, central human woman. She is, what's she like? Let's get some personality images because I think all vampires should share a narcissistic quality, a sort of self-centered quality. But where does she fall on the spectrum of other things? Of other things. That was a great pitch for you. Spork says, going without blood, the vampires seem notably unhealthy and proceed to look more and more undead. That's cool. It is pretty cool. Refined woman with a parasol, although they don't really come out during the day, so which is something we discussed last time. She has a yippy dog. She looks like Cruella de Vil. Orange hair. Very authoritative, kind of the leader of the group. I can certainly see, in terms of, because she's landed herself such a good position, I certainly can see her being, you know, having that sort of force of charisma. Some people say that she should be like Katharine Hepburn. Some people have suggested that she should be quite maternal. Someone somewhere suggested that she be remarkably kind. Lots of people liking the Cruella de Vil thing. I don't know, it's getting a bit cartoony there for me. For obvious reasons, because Cruella de Vil was a cartoon. I think it's interesting that I asked what she's like, and a lot of people are giving me physical descriptors. Wraithwest says, do vampires keep slaves in this setting? For the sake of my own comfort, no. I just don't want to roleplay slavery. Hamilton says, difficult to rattle, but she will wreck you if you manage it. Someone suggests Kate Blanchett as Galadriel, but like when she goes dark. Instead of a Dark Lord, you will have a queen! Big fur coat with fluffy sleeves. She's actually really nice, some people say. All right, okay, let's come up with a couple of spectrums that we can put her on. In terms of the religion of the setting, because that's one of the things that we're focusing on in this setting, in this particular location, we decided our sort of three main points are social, political, and religious. So, is she social or antisocial? Like, is she likable, talks with everyone, getting on with people, or is she more secluded and keeps to herself? Saintly and imposing, says Steve. Very social, very lazy, loves to sleep for weeks on end. Social, very likable, social. Sort of the Mother Mary of the religion. Social, high social, social. So everyone's kind of on board for her to be a bit of a socialite. All right. She's a socialite. Okay. Now, politically, is she politically cutthroat? Is she reserved? Is she big into the sort of political manipulations? Is she not so interested in the politics of the situation? Those sorts of things. How is she politically speaking? The kind of person who shops locally. I'm getting die for me vibes. Cutthroat AF. Background planner, subtlety. Cutthroat feels appropriate, politically subtle, cutthroat but not openly. Reserved, neutral. Machiavellian. Okay, well, this is interesting because we're getting more of a split on this one than we got on the social. Everyone was very definitive. Yeah, she's social, but we're a little more divided here. We've got a lot of cutthroat, a lot of ambivalent, a lot of, I mean, I think there's a likelihood that she has, that she has some level of political savvy, because she did manipulate her way into the central districts, she's got a really good position in this region of control. So, and we talked about whether or not she might have been in a position of leadership over the four. But whether that means that she's cutthroat rather than subtle or, those sorts of things. Yeah, maybe Machiavellian is a good descriptor in terms of like middle ground, of being, manipulative, but there's room for Jason says, I think she doesn't like to do things herself, but she prepares people to do what she wants. She plays people she's fostered off of each other to be amused and get specific things to occur. So that could be fun in the way that it interacts with how, we've got the sort of paladin living people and that sort of thing. That idea of like, she gives to the people and the people love her and they work for her and they've got a close relationship. But yeah. All right, neat. So there's, that sort of manipulative quality. So politically, manipulative, I do think is a good word for it because it means that there's room for it to be, she can tap in and out of the scheming when she wants, and it can be for grand things or small things. And then finally, religiously, where does she fall on that religious scale? Is she, going to church every Sunday to keep up appearances, or whatever day of the week they have their mass? Is she regularly keeping up that appearance of like, we are pious, we are, religiously chosen? Osark says, takes a bat's form with great wings barbed at each joint, and end with an iron claw. And that just makes me think of the great animal from The Swan Princess. The great animal. An absolute saint. Mother matron, religious AF. Religious is a necessary. It is, but I do think that some of them will, get away with being less religious. As long as the group look like they're being religious. We are the paragons of virtue. Saintly, very much. Yeah, all right. We've got a little more of a divide. It's not as clear as the socialite, but people do seem to think that she's quite pious. Neat. Okay. So what's her name? We need a name now. We're reaching the 2-hour mark. Look, this just keeps happening. We chatter. We get caught up in ideas, don't we? How late is it for some of you? Don't answer that. That'll make me sad. For the masses, pious. For in private, cynical. Polar opposite of publicly pious. She wants to believe, but her past has taught her otherwise. It's very dramatic. She views it as just more politics. I could see that being the case. I'm going to put a question mark after pious. So we seem to think that she does, like, attend. She makes a show of it, but whether or not she's really, like, into it, question mark. Oh, we got some names. Cecilia, Jane. Can I move this further? Yes, I can. Cecilia, Jane, Akasha, Lariel von Easterwhite. That's kind of cool. Serena Mistingale. Ophelia. Ooh, Ophelia's nice because not only is it sort of innocent and sweet and associated with flowers, we also directly associate her with death. You know, the classic image of Ophelia is Ophelia drowned. So Ophelia could be cool. It's 5 a.m. for me, call her Valeria. Yeah, well, Icky Blob, I'm wondering whether they are directly actually thought of as saints. Like, I think that they have celebratory days about them, which are saints' days, like, or the equivalent of how we have saints' days. But they're like actual like parties in the street, like full-on parades celebrating them as if they were saints. But I don't know whether they're called saints or not. That's the question mark. Yep. All right, Cecilia, Magdalena, Amaryllis. Someone said Calliope. Calliope's cool. It's very amusing. Because it's a muse. Ophelia, Moira. Calliope and sort of Cecilia type names have the right vibe for me. I don't know why. Eurydice. Another one associated with death. That could be cool. Yeah. So let's pick a placeholder name for now. The ones that I like most that have stood out to me are Cecilia, Calliope, and Eurydice, probably. Yeah, I'm gonna put in a placeholder with Eurydice because I've been listening to a lot of Hadestown. That's what's happening here. I have misspelled it 3 times. Eurydice. Come on, type better, Dale. All right. Oh, come on. I gotta pick up the pace if any of us are ever gonna leave or sleep. All right. Human, he, they, boy, NB boy. So they've got a share of the city and the country. I will say, we're about to go through the same sort of social, political, religious stances. I think that this character might be the most truly pious. I kind of see that quiet, like, they didn't fight for a super powerful central position. They were happy enough to, have their share, and they've got that, or at least that's their image, is kind of this, everyone's singing Hadestown, and it's, my heart. Okay, but, yeah, that sort of idea of being sort of quite peaceful and, humble, I kind of can see this character. There's so much singing. All right, so that's what I think their place is religiously. So I'm gonna write pious exclamation point. as a point of difference. Socially, where do we think they fit? Do we think that they're more reserved, keep more to themselves, or are they out in the thick of it, mingling with the people? This is the second human, by the way. Very hunter-ranger style, socially reserved, prefers to be alone, has an understanding with nature, which is why he spends time in the forests. You could have saints' relics. Yeah, I like that. Pretty solitary, relatively reserved. Cool. And I feel like they're still, beloved of the people. They still have a presence. They still come in for the sort of days of celebration, but it's not as, let's have a huge party and smash everything. It's more like, let's, have a day of Thanksgiving or whatever. But maybe not the most beloved, because they don't throw parties of let's smash everything. Okay. What's the next one? Political. Where do they stand politically? Ernest in the city, Jack in the country. Ooh, Sentinel says, in terms of big bad evil guy style, we have a hunter, an enchantress, a brute, and a manipulator. Kind of like that. And part of what I like about it is that the way we talked about possibly named Eurydice is, it would lead us to believe that she would be the manipulator. But I think the manipulator is actually our border Goliath. That idea of here's the underdog, but in the end, they're going to bite you. Larry suggests that they are the most concerned about the realm and least concerned about their own personal gain. Politically aloof, says Chase, tends their garden and weeds out dissent, but isn't too interested beyond the garden walls. I quite like that, both thematically and just in terms of it's very clean, it's very simple, it's very they're not planning to make big moves or anything, but they're politically engaged to the point of maintaining order, maintaining the status quo. Heavily involved but invested in the results, not the great game itself. Osak says there are three: the champion, the captain, and the king. Alright, so, come on, get in that. Tends their own garden is what I'm writing for the political input. Alright, what's their name? Pruning and weeding as necessary, says Hunter Delta, which I think is a great metaphor, because you have this lovely garden imagery of like, oh yes, we're tending the garden, but tending the garden means ripping out the bits that you don't want. Tim says, okay, but can they actually have a garden? Yeah, they can. Luther, Lucius, Ernest, Vienno, Alexei, Boris. Ooh, ooh, bump, 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 says Dale. Henry, Ghent, Renfield, Uriel, name them after a plant. Eldris, Shen, Clovis, Hadrian, Ernest, Drusk, Oliver, Dimitri, like Demeter, Adam, Rowan, Roan, Pascal, Pan Sage, Vortigern, Hydrus Zephyr, Adam with an apple tree orchard. That's kind of cool. People seem to like Rowan. I quite like Roan, as in Roan. But maybe that's just because I like The Secret of Rowan Inish. Garrett says, let me delve into my plant names. Julius Caesar says, fellow Romans, be with me. Julius, not a bad idea. I'm just reading all the options in the chat. This is August could work. I can't use Cassius. That's like my go-to name. It's already taken. I love Cassius so much. Yon Cassius has a lean and hungry look. He thinks too much. Such men are dangerous. Where do people stand on a name attached to what we would assume with a month? Because then you get that sort of seasonal flavor of a gun. So like if you were to do August, Northern Hemisphere would associate that with, high summer, I assume. Whereas here it's kind of, even though it's technically still winter, it's kind of associated with the beginning of autumn. Autumn could be a name. Seasonal names, month names. Oh, there might actually be a lake because a bunch of people just started talking about August as a. All right, I'm gonna temporarily call them August. But as ever, everything is liable to change. All right, let's talk about our hedonist halfling first. Socially, we know that they are in it. Hedonist party, a boy. Then politically, I get the feeling that he's not particularly got his finger on the pulse of the politics. It's kind of like he's got his place. He was given, like, he earned his spot through whatever he did, force or what have you. And now he's just like, neat, I got it, and isn't necessarily considering the broader politics of the situation and the changing politics of the situation. Yeah, Davey, it's seasonal and also has the Roman association. Yeah, that's kind of what I was going for. Yeah, and autumn being closer to gender neutral. Ow, 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 ow. My legs are stuck to my chair. I've got Theseus' leg. Ow. All right. Fat boy, fat boy. Bored with politics, yeah. That one would be a good Nero. So, are we fine with me saying that politically he's, like, a little out of touch? Or unconcerned, maybe, is a better word. But where do we stand on his religious leanings? Does he attend every week? Does he not at all? Is he an Easter and Christmas kind of a guy? The halfling is the day-to-day manager of the city on behalf of the lady, possibly Eurydice, which is also how he's fueling the rebellion. Has an understanding of politics and religion on a very surface level and not knowing a lot about the inner workings. He's smart, kind of scarily smart, because he's so often drunk you'd think that he wouldn't be. Imagining the halfling knows what's going on politically, but finds it boring or doesn't take it seriously, so he's not necessarily putting two and two together. Yeah, I kind of dig that. Like, he can't be a straight up moron, otherwise he'd be useless to both the vampires and the spies who use him for information. But I think that's the idea, isn't it? That he he knows what's going on. He just he doesn't think of it as being that important, really. Easter and Christmas, shows up for feasts. Lapsed Catholic vibes. Shepherd of Goats says he hears everything and lets everything slip. Maybe he attends, but he doesn't really care, sees religion as a way to connect to people on a personal level and insinuate himself into their lives. He could be a sort of braggadocious, look at me, look at how good I'm being. He comes and he fills the church coffers. He puts so much money into it, and he's like, oh, I'm so good, but doesn't necessarily engage in the spiritual aspect of it. Spends a lot of money to make the simple folk like him. He dresses up real nice when he goes to church, yeah. No, okay, so for those of you who missed the religion talk earlier, the religion is one in which. I'm explaining it again. There is no afterlife. Your life now is the reward for your life. It's like you live the best life you can, is kind of the religion. And it is about giving. It's got a lot of that sort of giving of yourself sort of undercurrent to it. Yeah. So he's a bit of a braggadocious churchgoer. What's his name? This is going so much longer than intended. I am sorry. Oh, Scott makes a good point. I think rather than donating himself, he would throw lavish fundraisers for the church. Isn't that just exactly like real celebrities? Davey says, I like the idea of him not going extremely often, but whenever he does, it is a big production. Everard, Commodus, Christoph, Chad, Cornelius, Bungus, Crassus, Janus. We're getting very Roman now. Jan Kais. Maximilian. Cricket, the sound of cricket signals change. Pat, I like the name Cricket, but I can't use it because it was one of my first ever D&D PCs, and it's permanently attached. Well, Pathfinder, technically. Jean-Baptiste. Hugh. Louis, Remus, Paxton. I like some of these. Bryant. Jaeger. Eustace. There once was a boy named Eustace Clarence Scrub, and he almost deserved it. Mulligan, Midas. Charles. Arsene, Karen, Newton, Chevron. Edmund. I quite like Midas. And I mean, it's such a weird one because it's like everyone knows who Midas was, or maybe I just assume that because I have that mythological background. But Midas, like Lord Midas would like to see you, you know. Cain, Igneous, Yuri, Gatsby. Wow. Riker. Adis. Chastain. Okay, someone suggests taking Midas, but twisting it a bit so that it's not so overt. So, Milos. Hugo does seem like a halfling name, doesn't it? Midas Sibelius. Maybe a name that's extremely over the top and extremely royal. Yeah, well, I mean, that's kind of what I think Midas would be. Darcy suggests Midas is an assumed name. He's taken it on purpose. Midius. Milo. Yeah, well, I mean, we're clearly going along that line now, so let's call him Midas, and I'll mess around with the name at a later time. And then finally, our Goliath. Our Borderlands Goliath, who doesn't want to be on the Borderlands. Where do we think they stand socially? Because I'm kind of assuming they don't interact much with all the people out there who are like, vampires are bad, and we want them to die. And she's just like, okay. Oh, Goliath! Woo! People love this Goliath. She's very antisocial. Oh, that is something we should have done. Oh. Dave Bagsful is saying so and so, the Dragon of the North, like the Raven of the West, or whatever was happening before that I mentioned during the notes rundown, which we should have gone through that and been like, who has the sort of paladin following, who gets called what. But maybe we'll just end up doing more of these streams than anticipated. I was hoping that we could get through this stuff in like 2 more streams today and another stream, but it's not looking like it. Antisocial, loner for reals. Very aloof. Ooh, when she comes down from the mountain to deal with the mortals, it's a big scary deal. I like that. So, aloof. Now, politically, we already decided earlier on she's not savvy. Which is how she ended up here. So then, religiously, where do we stand? Yeah, actually, Ryan, I think you might be right. The most hated by her people, but actually the most benignly disposed to them. Yeah, I think there is that thing of like, where you've got that idea of August, who is sort of this brand is peaceful and humble and, the gardener, the nurturer. But we were also talking about them weeding people out as needed, ruthlessly, or not ruthlessly, dispassionately. When it comes to the blood tithe, it's like, just hand them over. But for the Goliath, you've got that edge of, it might not be for their sake necessarily, but she's got fewer people. So when the blood tithe comes, if she's giving an equal share of her people, she's losing, huge swaths of mortals, which is bad for her, but also bad for the mortals. And so in some capacity, she's probably trying to not let that sort of a thing happen. But her people also are the most keyed into what's up with the vampires, and they're like, this is horrible. So there's probably that aspect of, they hate her, even though they kind of have the best deal right now. Although we did also talk about the sort of isolated border areas being hit hard and fast the most as a way of like stopping insurrection. All right, so what I'm seeing a lot of is the idea that she has an extremely strong faith, but it's maybe not the faith of, you know, this region, of these people. It's maybe not this same religion she's got faith, but it's her own faith from before. Whereas the other vampires are tying themselves into the faith of the region in order to gain and keep power. She's got like genuine faith, but not attached to political gain, because she doesn't engage on that political level, or not in the same way. Apollo suggests maybe the Goliath only takes the elderly so that the people don't lose their best men and women in the blood tithe. People hate it because that's their grandparents, but unfortunately it's more practical. And especially if she's like running the agricultural stuff and trying to keep the farms going, she would want to keep the people strong, like physically strong. And again, it's not necessarily out of a love for them, but it's, you know, it's a practicality, which is something that would still get her in trouble sort of with these other three vampires, because they're in places where that practicality isn't something they have to consider. They're dealing with, you know, very different economics where they are. Garrett says that she appears in the city only infrequently, usually for meetings and bringing in the blood tithe. Yeah, I would agree with that, and I think that that means that she also misses out on this, like, frivolous Saints' Day stuff. She doesn't get that glory in the city either. Like, she still has the respect in the city where people are like, oh yeah, these are the four vampires who are a big deal. They would still be like, oh, she's one of the four. But they wouldn't have the same, you know, reaction emotionally to her that they would have to the vampires who are throwing them parties. Chase says she's sounding sort of like a darker, more pragmatic Eddard Stark. Different religion, genuinely believed, takes care of her domain, deep philosophy of rule, but bad at politics. Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, cool. So, deep but different faith. And it's not for show. It's not a performative faith. All right, what's her name? This one's going to be tricky because this is a very different race. I'm going to be Bela Lugosi. That's my Bela Lugosi impression. Baline or Baleen. Orsola. Malapeth. Rowena, which does get the Rowan that people wanted earlier. Risha. I quite like Risha. Bronwyn. Sorsha, that makes me think of Willow. I love you, Sorsha. I worship you, Sorsha. Casella. Risha, Casella.
lot of people want Ursula. Ursula's maybe a little on the nose for me. So far, my favorites are Risha and Casella. I know I'm still live. We're getting caught up in it, and it's people can sleep in, and so it's everything's bad. We're gonna wrap up in a minute once we get a placeholder name for this Borderlands vampiric Goliath. Yeah, I might go with people suggesting Boudica. But then Boudica, people will just be like, oh, so it's like Boudica. I quite like Risha or Casella. I'm gonna put in Risha for now. I don't know what it is. It's that sort of soft shh sound. For some reason, strikes me as being Goliathy. I don't know why. So there we go. We've got 4 vampires, a little bit more fleshed out now. So we've got a socialite who is politically manipulative. She's, for all intents and purposes, she attends church. She goes, she makes her appearance. Her name is Eurydice for the time being. And she's a human. I should mention that. And she's central. She's got her hooks into the central sort of district. Also in the central district, we have a hedonist party boy, halfling vampire who is politically tapped in but unconcerned, and a bit of a braggadocious churchgoer. Shows up, makes a big performance out of it. And for the time being, his name is Midas. We've got slightly further out from the center, but not out of touch of the sort of political heart of this region. We have August, who is another human who is reserved and solitary, but still kind of in contact. He has they have a connection with the people, even if they are a little more reserved and standoffish. They tend their own garden, both, politically and literally. They are actually genuinely pious, and that's a big part of their brand and their image. And then finally, on the borders, caring for the largest but most difficult region, we have a vampiric Goliath who is aloof socially, not particularly politically savvy, and has a deep faith but a different faith, which is not performative, and all these things kind of work to separate her and put her at a disadvantage, even though she is in a position of technically power in the region. So I think we did a lot of good work today. It's difficult work once you start getting to the point of needing to choose names and races and things, but we got a bunch of it done, and I think that it went well. The stream actually worked. Hey, that's sick. Boom, boom, boom. But I think we're going to call it there because we've been going for 2.5 hours, which is entirely too long. But thanks for hanging out. I hope you're all keeping safe. It's been lovely chatting with you. And I'll probably see you again sometime soon because we're all stuck inside. And I may as well do more streams while that's the case, mightn't I? So thank you very much for showing up. You don't have to email this one to your grandma. Yeah, is there anything else I need to tell you? I don't think there is. I'm worried that I'm forgetting things. Anyway, I'll catch you all another time. Oh, I should say one more time while we're here, and while it's relevant, when I say vampire, you say north. Vampire. watches chat and waits. People are asking me when the next stream is. There is no schedule. We never know. Keep safe, everyone. Wow, this delay on chat is actually pretty long. I'll wait till it says north a bunch and then I'll end the stream. So it'll be sudden from your perspective and sudden from my perspective, but hey. Hey! Alright. There's all the norths. Bye, folks.